Welcome to Boomshot, the show where we take a look at film, photography, and the business behind the scenes. You may notice we're not in the studio right now, and that's because this week I wanted to make a point of eliminating distractions while you're writing. Also, our green screen's kind of broken right now, so it just worked out. Last week we talked about characters and how important they are to your script. If you haven't seen that, make sure you go and watch that one first, then come back and finish watching this one. Once you're caught up, we can talk about one of the boldest statements I made. Your characters have to guide your story. Now, if you've ever studied writing, you've probably heard of the three-act structure. Basically, in a nutshell, you have an inciting action, a reversal in the middle, and then a final act where everything comes to a climax and gets resolved. There are tons and tons and tons of articles out there on this, and over 100 books, if I remember correctly, so I'm not going to go into the details here because you can find out all you want to know about it online, but I want to do something a little bit different. I want to redirect your attention away from the formulas and back to what really matters, your character's story. Now, if you've done your homework and you've created a well-rounded character, you're going to have his start point in mind, his end point in mind, and know exactly what you're trying to say through his journey. But you may not have all the little details figured out on how you're getting from that start point to the end point. Normally, this is where people go and they try and find a story structure to build their movie around. The first thing you'll probably come across is the three-act story structure. Now, I want to encourage you not to get bogged down in the idea that the three-act structure is the only one out there. The three-act structure only has two major turning points, and your script may need more than that. You may need 4, or 8, or 12, but not 120, because that's lost territory, and you don't want to get into lost territory. No one will be able to follow. So just word of caution. If you have a character who's having a complete mental breakdown, 2 twists may not be enough. You want to give his wildly confusing journey as many twists and turns as possible so that you can keep your audience engaged and interested, as well as throwing doubt onto what the truth actually is throughout the story. So, the three-act story structure might not work for that story. Now, there are some basic things you need to make sure you have in your script. An introduction that acclimates us to your character, a problem that they have to solve, and a resolution to that problem. Now, how you introduce them, what that problem is, and whether that resolution is positive or negative is completely up to you, but those are the things that you need to focus on the most. The beauty of focusing on these things is that instead of asking yourself, how can I get a major turning point to hit on page 27, you can instead focus on pushing your character forward in his story. So you can throw something at him and see how he reacts to it, then throw another curveball and see how quickly that pushes him into the next scene. Or find those moments where he naturally needs to take a breather and then see how those moments can bring revelation. The three-act story structure is not the only story structure out there. And in fact, according to John Truby, it can actually kill your creativity in your writing. If you want to take a look at his very interesting take on the three-act structure, and I suggest you do, click on the link below and you can go read the whole thing. Now, the reason that I'm so passionate about this is because I wish I had known this stuff even a year ago. I've written plenty of scripts where I was so focused on hitting every mark in the three-act story structure that I feel like I missed on opportunities to do stuff that was new and interesting. Now, I'm not saying those things turned out bad or that I'm not proud of what I've written, but I do feel like I would approach those situations differently now than I would have a year ago. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing having 3 acts by any means. It's a tool in your writing belt. But as you'll find with any job, having the right tool makes a big difference. And I just want you to have a fully rounded tool belt. So let's say you've done some research and some soul searching and you find that the 3-act story structure doesn't work for the story that you're telling, but you're not quite sure you want to write something without having some type of template or guide to follow along with just yet. There are some other story structures that you can use and adapt to your story. First up is the hero's journey. Now, this has 17 different points for you to hit throughout your script. Things like the call to action, the refusal of the call, crossing the first threshold, meeting the mentor, the magic flight, and a bunch of others, but I'm going to run out of fingers, so I'll stop there. This is something that you're going to find most of the time in fantasy adventures, things like Star Wars or The Lord of the Rings.
I'm going on an adventure!
Next up is Michael Haig's 6-point plot structure. Try saying that 3 times fast. This is actually a variant on the 3-act structure, but it has a little bit more detail to it. Instead of having 2 major turning points, you're going to have 6 turning points to follow along with. I've used this in my writing a couple of times, and it's got me out of some tight spots. Last on our little list is Blake Snyder's Save the Cat beat sheets. Now, one of the things that I love about this, aside from it having absolutely the best name of the 3, is that it talks about having your first shot and your last shot mirror each other. Film is a very visual medium, and one of the great things that you can do is to have your first shot and your last shot look almost exactly the same, but show the progression of your character throughout their journey. We use this in one of our upcoming short films where we wrote it with the first shot and last shot in mind, and it created this beautiful character moment as well as giving us motivation for the character throughout the script. One of the other things that you can mess with is time. You don't have to tell every story from the beginning to the end. You can start at the end and work your way backwards like they did in Memento, or you can start at the middle and then loop all the way back around. Maybe you can just jump back and forth. These are interesting ways that you can reveal things about your character and keep your audience engaged. Now, there are plenty other approaches to story structure out there, and I encourage you to go and seek them out. Find what works best for your story. Experiment with things. Do whatever you can to find that right fit. While I don't believe that practice makes perfect, I do believe that practice sharpens your skills. And skill is the most marketable asset you have in this business. No matter what story structure you end up using, whether it's one you find in your research or one you make up on your own for your project, it's important not to get caught up in what everyone else is doing. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that your story progresses in an interesting, realistic way. So if your character needs 2 major turning points, great. If they need 20, great. Just don't get caught up in the idea that one story structure or another is the end-all of all story structures. Do what works best for you. Above all, make sure you write with intentionality. Have a goal in mind and work with excellence to reach that goal. Don't settle for less than your best. Now get writing. And don't go to Facebook first. I know you want to. Hi, thanks for joining us here on Boomshot. If you like that, make sure you hit the like button below and the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss an episode. Here on this channel, you can find Boomshot, as well as a lot of our short films and other projects that we're working on. So stay tuned.